In a real democracy, every citizen has the same prized possession, their vote. That vote gives you a say in whether you can earn a good living, whether your kids have access to decent schools, whether they'll be sent to war, and whether they'll get health care. When democracy crumbles, citizens become more like serfs. They labor under laws that are made by oligarchs and elites. They work 2 jobs for barely livable pay. They get taxed to fund Wall Street and wars and bank bailouts. Your vote is your power. And right now, the Democratic Party elites are trying to take it away from you. At the order of President Biden, the DNC is punishing states where President Biden lost in 2020. He came in 4th, for example, in Iowa and finished last in New Hampshire. So the DNC is trying to move those states out of their historic first slots and start instead with South Carolina, where President Biden finally won his first victory.
What are you going to do about RFK Jr.?
I'm very, very proud of the president, and we're going to get it done for him and Kamala Harris in this primary and again in the general election.
Those changes violate state laws, so the legislatures can't comply with the plan. But do you know who the real losers are? You are. You're going to lose your right to vote in a free and fair election. Based upon the DNC's plan, if you live in the state of New Hampshire or Iowa, your vote just won't count. And Georgia too, by the way. In that state, they want to kick anyone off the ballot if they campaigned in New Hampshire. These crooked measures will disenfranchise millions of citizens. These people will be robbed of their votes just because the elites say so. And it's not only voters in a handful of states that the DNC is trying to silence. It's every voter in every state. So how do they plan to do that? Oh, there's another rule that the committee is drafting behind closed doors, and it's similar to a trick that they used to kick Bernie Sanders out in 2016. They're flooding the convention with party operatives with opaque names like pleos and automatic delegates, whose job is to drown out the popular vote. Once the pleos and automatic delegates arrive at the Chicago convention next summer, the vote tallies all change, and the people's choice can be overturned in an instant. I could win 2/3 of the popular vote and still be denied the nomination. That's not democracy, that's theater. When I was growing up, this country was the democratic light of the world. We were the exemplar, we were the template for all the other nations on earth. This is what democracy looked like. We did it better than anybody. Based upon our example, dozens upon dozens of new democracies took root in every corner of the earth. But when we deny citizens their right to vote and when we rig the process in favor of insiders, then the flames of democracy flickers, and someday soon it will go out. The good news is these rules don't take effect until the DNC votes on them on September 14th. So let's use our power while we still have it. It's time to demand a fair primary process where every vote counts equally, and the candidate who gets the most votes wins the nomination. That's the democracy we learned about in school. That's the democracy that people around the world yearn for. That's the democracy that we now have to fight to protect. Whomever you plan to vote for next year, now is the time to tell the DNC that you want democracy back in the Democratic Party. Add your name to the Demand a Fair Vote petition below, and please use your voice while you still can. I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I appreciate your help.
Joe Biden's just ordered a political hit on RFK Jr. And the DNC has just fixed the primary to make it impossible for him to win. Dennis Kucinich, RFK Jr.'s campaign manager, is here. Dennis, what is going on with the DNC?
Well, I can tell you what's going on with RFK Jr., and that is that Mr. Kennedy wants to make sure that every Democrat who votes in a primary, their votes will count, and that if you win a primary, that you win the delegates. I mean, I know that sounds like a novel idea, but as Mr. Kennedy has pointed out, the DNC has arranged it so they can put extra delegates in, stuff the ballot box in a primary, and effectively, even if Mr. Kennedy were to get 60, 70%, hand the election to Mr. Biden. This simple idea that if you win New Hampshire, you should win New Hampshire, you should get the delegates. But the DNC says because Mr. Kennedy campaigns in the first in the nation state, no, his votes won't count. I mean, what in the world's that about? I want everyone to think about that. You can win, and then they don't let your votes count. I mean, the truth is that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the only Democrat who would have any chance of defeating Mr. Trump in the election.
The DNC does not want a primary. They're effectively disenfranchising the Democratic voters from having any choice in who becomes the Democratic nominee. So two of the things they've done to date, they've made rules that if any candidate sets foot in the state of Iowa or sets foot in the state of New Hampshire, then none of the votes that are cast for that candidate will be tallied. In other words, any delegate that I win in New Hampshire or Iowa would go instead to the president. And now they're trying to change it so that if I campaign in New Hampshire, that none of the votes cast for me in Georgia will count. And that's significant because it's hard to win the nomination without Georgia. If you add up all the superdelegates that they control and all of the automatic delegates that just go to the party and go to the president, I would have to win almost 80% of all of the states in order to beat President Biden, even if he only wins 20%. You know, we live at a time in American history when a lot of Americans think that democracy is broken, that the political system is rigged, and that there's not really any democracy. And unfortunately, the DNC is taking a lot of steps that confirm that outlook. If you like this video and you want to help me become president of the United States, go to Kennedy24.com and donate now. Hi, I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here. After 4 months of crisscrossing the country and speaking to thousands of Americans from all walks of life, I've come to understand that what our campaign really is the spearhead of a massive populist awakening. You see, our nation's most serious problems come from a single source: the entrenched corporate political elite. Government agencies, Congress, the defense industry, Wall Street, the media, big tech, big pharma, big ag, and pretty much big everything have a death grip on our democracy. And there's only one thing that can break that grip. And no, it's not me. It's you, the people. It's a populist movement that unites left and right, black and white, rural and urban, young and old. We can't just wait around for the Washington establishment to change their minds. We can't expect Wall Street to stop strip mining the middle class of its equity and its wealth. We can't expect the military-industrial complex to promote peace, or the censorship big tech complex to promote freedom or freedom of speech. We need to do it ourselves. We have to take back power in this country for the people. Let me add one more item to the list of entrenched institutions, the Democratic National Committee. In an honest primary, the candidate with the most votes would be the nominee, right? But the DNC has imposed delegate rules that make it nearly impossible for an insurgent candidate to win. It has totally rigged the system.
Very early on, back in February, we passed a resolution unanimously within the DNC that we are all riding with Biden and Kamala Harris.
But you know what? Neither the DNC nor anyone else is going to stop us. President Biden's billion-dollar war chest is not a match for people power ultimately. That's why we're opening field offices in all 50 states. My campaign will be funded by millions of small donations from people who want to heal this nation. Now's a great time to make a donation to my campaign. Even $5 or $10 contributes to our momentum. Thank you, everyone, and God bless you. If you like this video and you want to help me become president of the United States, go to Kennedy24.com and donate now.
Let me ask you a question from Jordan Peterson that he asked when I told him that I'm speaking with you. When does the left go too far? I suppose he's referring to cultural issues, identity politics.
Well, you know, Jordan trying to get me to badmouth the left the whole time I was in. I really enjoyed my talk with him. But he seemed to have that agenda where he wanted me to, say bad things about the left. That's not what my campaign is about. I want to do the opposite. Oh, I'm not going to badmouth the left. I was on a show this week with David Remnick from The New Yorker, and he tried to get me to badmouth Donald Trump and Alex Jones and a lot of other people, and baiting me to do it. And of course, there's a lot of bad things I could say about all those people, but I'm trying to find values that hold us together and we can share in common rather than to focus constantly on these disputes and these issues that drive us apart. So me sitting here bad-mouthing the left or bad-mouthing the right is not going to advance the ball. I really want to figure out ways that, what do these groups hold in common that we can all, have a shared vision of what we want this country to look like.
Well, that's music to my ears.
If you like this video and you want to help me become president of the United States, go to Kennedy24.com and donate now.
You made a comment after Wednesday's presidential debate on the GOP side that the candidates are out of sync with the public. And I think you referenced Oliver Anthony's song, Richmond, North of Richmond.
Richmond, north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just want to have total control.
He really frames this as a class war. The working poor are being systematically strip-mined of their wealth by what he calls Richmond, north of Richmond. In other words, the Congress that essentially functions as indentured servants to the big corporations. Anthony has talked about, how we've got to put aside the culture war, because that's kind of an orchestrated dispute, that keeps blacks and whites fighting each other. It's a distraction from the real culprits of this, which is BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, these huge corporations that now own 88% of the S&P 500. And they're now trying to buy every single-family home in America. And if they stay on the current trajectory, they will own 60% of the single-family homes by 2030. Almost everybody I know has a story of a friend or their own story of going to buy a home, about to make an offer on it, or maybe they made an offer on it, and then somebody swoops in with a cash offer and takes it off the table, steals it out from under them. And when you look at who that is, it's usually an LLC with some ambiguous name. But if you trace it to actually who owns it, it's BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. So these companies are buying our land base, they're buying up the farms in this country. Today, the average wage for an American is $5,000 less than the cost of basic human needs of food, transportation, and housing. And so credit card debt has gone up. And who owns virtually all of those banks and credit card companies? BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. So the whole thing is rigged to strip mine wealth from the American public. And these Republicans who are debating this week, they're like 40 years behind. They have all these platitudes from the Reagan administration. We're going to be tough on crime, tough on China, tough on Russia, tough on women who, want bodily autonomy, tough on the environment. But none of them talked about what's happening to Americans who just can't pay their bills anymore. If you like this video and you want to help me become president of the United States, go to Kennedy24.com and donate now.